Security advisor John Bolton arriving at a United States District Court in Greenbelt, Maryland. He is expected to surrender after being indicted on 18 counts over the alleged mishandling of classified documents. Bolton faces 8 counts of transmission of national defense information and 10 counts of retention of national defense information. The documents contained intel on future attacks, foreign missile launches, and human intel sources.
So things have been developing fast for John Bolton. There you saw him surrendering himself. He has actually now gone, into court. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Although, as we're gonna get into, this seems like they might actually get him on some of this. We'll see. The idea that that guy who looks like he's already 95 years old is gonna spend decades in prison or whatever seems kind of ridiculous. And bear in mind, the context is that this is yet another of Donald Trump's political enemies that now maybe faces the threat of being lock them up. There are some differences though. And so that's really what we want to dive into here in terms of the actual evidence against him and also the process that got us to this point. Although people love to say it, we don't actually have any kind of derangement syndrome here. We deal in nuance. We're one of the only people that does. So let's dive into all the details. First of all, the charges against him, 18 counts, accused of using personal email and a messaging app to share more than 1,000 pages of diary notes about his day-to-day activities as Mr. Trump's national security advisor in 2018 and 2019. They were shared apparently to family members who don't have security clearances, and they included national defense information, including things classified as top secret. And obviously, however you think you're supposed to share top secret information, the proper way is not through personal email or a messaging app. The proper way is bringing it out in a party at Mar-a-Lago or leaving it next to the toilet for the next person to use the crapper to potentially see. That's typically how that's supposed to be done. Now, if he is found guilty on these 18 counts, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. Each count carries a maximum potential sentence of 10 years. He is already 76 years old. So this could be rough on him at this point. And so obviously it looks bad to have a guy who's been a noted critic of Donald Trump, a guy who Donald Trump himself has talked a lot of smack about being brought in this way. But there are some differences. So the Justice Department followed a fairly normal process in getting to this indictment. We've pointed out all the ways that the Comey and James, all those indictments have not gone through the normal procedures. The indictment also appears to include actual credible evidence of wrongdoing. And they're not just playing games with mortgages or whatever as they have in past cases. The prosecution appeared to have followed normal department channels. It did not involve firing people to get someone willing to bring the indictment. Kelly Hayes is the US attorney in Maryland and was among the career prosecutors to sign off on the charges in conjunction with the Justice Department's National Security Division. So it's a little bit more like how things normally go, and the investigation had been going on for some time. And so all of that makes this seem more serious. That's my non-expert view of this based on what I have seen. We're gonna turn now to an expert legal analyst for CNN to break down why this is more serious than, for instance, what James Comey is facing.
Well, Jake, if prosecutors can prove these charges, that's always the big if, then John Bolton's conduct to me is more serious, certainly than we saw in the investigations of Hillary Clinton, of Mike Pence, of Joe Biden, and even more serious than the conduct that got Donald Trump indicted.
So that's certainly something to bear in mind. We have more, but I want to give Brett a chance to get into this. When I saw the first headline, I'm like, oh God, here we go again. The next person on the list goes down, but there seems to be some nuance. What do you make of it?
I mean, I don't typically fancy being in a position of defending John Bolton. I think he's like one of the worst people. So if it is the case that John Bolton mishandled classified documents, I have a long track record. I think a lot of us have a long track record of saying that that's a bad thing, putting it in a specific context of understanding that it's a bad thing, and how bad it is relative to like stabbing someone in the chest. Like it's not as bad as that. I think
No.
it's very obvious to me that Trump's like, oh, me mishandling documents. Every time someone talks about that, they're talking about me sitting on the toilet in Mar-a-Lago with a whole stack of stuff near a toilet. I'd like to change the narrative on this. John Bolton has turned tail and started to hate me. All right, so let's go after him. That seems like what happened. Yeah, and I think there's probably going to be a lot of like weird Democrat liberals who take the bait and are like, John Bolton's now a hero. We should protect him with all of our political capital. You know who we want to be affiliated with? John Bolton. And the answer is no. That's worse than affiliating yourself with the musical stylings and hairdos of Michael Bolton. Free haircut.
It's exactly like that. Yeah, no, it's possible, but well, I would say as a counterpoint to that, CNN seemed to not immediately jump into the mode you might expect with some of that analysis, and we'll get to more of it in a sec. But really fast, Dexter Wong in the chat says, and I think it's maybe a good point. I'm not a lawyer or whatever, but says Signalgate guy doesn't get prosecuted because, like, yeah, if what he did was he used messaging apps to share information, including classified national security information. Well, didn't Pete Hegseth didn't do that? Didn't everybody on that was it Telegram or Signal or whatever? That's what like you did the same thing then, didn't you? They knew that it wasn't secure. They may not have known there was a journalist there, but what does that have to do with whether you're violating the law? Dexter Wong, great point. Thank you for that.
I love
anyway,
it.
really fast. Let's turn.
Yeah.
You
Before you turn, like, here's the thing. John Bolton, I understand he looks like this, right? And my big question, I think the question on the minds of a lot of people is like, why the mustache? I understand the perfect hairdo. He's got it figured out. Obviously, it's going to do that. But why the mustache? And I thought, is he look crazy without a mustache? The answer is no. He looks totally fine. Now, this mouth might be a little different. I don't know which mouth he has under there, but like, my God, like.
Oh my God.
What do we think?
You know what? He takes off the mustache. I literally think it's a different person. He could go like incognito out. Like if they'd never find him if he just shaved the mustache. He'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What if he's like a famous person from history and then are just like, oh, what if I look like a Muppet professionally? Will I be able to hide my identity?
Okay, all right, and now I'm sure you will Muppetize him through AI. Anyway, we have to end by at least giving a statement from him. First of all, he said not guilty. That's his one statement, but he responded to the indictment saying, for 4 decades, I've devoted my life to America's foreign policy and national security. I would never compromise those goals. Again, we could substantively critique his actual positions on those and we would disagree on virtually everything. But he says Donald Trump's retribution against me began then, continued when he tried unsuccessfully to block the publication of my book, The Room Where It Happened. He says my book was reviewed and approved by the appropriate career clearance officials. When my email was hacked in 2021, the FBI was made fully aware. In 4 years of the prior administration, after those reviews, no charges were ever filed, which is a good point. Then came Trump 2, who embodies what Joseph Stalin's head of secret police once said, you show me the man and I'll show you the crime. These charges are not just about his focus on me or my diaries, but his intensive effort to intimidate his opponents to ensure that he alone determines what is said about his conduct. Dissent and disagreement are foundational to America's constitutional system and vitally important to our freedom. I look forward to the fight to defend my lawful conduct and to expose his abuse of power. Now, again, it might well be that he did break the law. There seems to be more evidence in this case than in others. It's also possible that he broke the law, but charges would have never been filed unless Donald Trump came in. There could be that sort of gray area.
Right.
Quick final point to you.
This story is chaos in the Republican Party. This is not Donald Trump versus Bolton. This is chaos of one Trump guy who went along with the other, who's fighting with a Trump guy. That's an undeniable fact here. And the fact that Trump is basically so bellicose toward Venezuela and saying we can invade means this is not a America first non-interventionist versus the biggest war hawk in the world. This is like two guys that love war fighting over which one's uglier.
Yeah, and which war should we do? Remember that John Bolton, he really angered Donald Trump by trying to push for him to bomb Iran, which Trump would never do.
Right.
So there you go.